You don't control what others think of you, but you do control what you tolerate. And that's where respect begins. How many times have you swallowed your pride, masked your anger, and pretended you didn't care just to keep the peace? How many times have you remained silent in the face of someone who mistreated you, believing that being the greatest meant remaining silent? Yes, the Stoic faced this too. The difference is that he didn't confuse calm with submission. He knew that true self-control isn't about accepting everything, but choosing what deserves your energy. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Comment respect if you're tired of being nice to those who only belittle you, because this video will show you how the great Stoic thinkers responded to disrespect without losing control or dignity. Think about it. What happens when you stop seeking approval and start calmly setting boundaries? When you understand that silence can be a more powerful response than any shouting? That's when the game changes, because respect isn't given, it's mirrored. And if you live surrounded by people who devalue you, perhaps the problem isn't that they don't respect you, it's that you continue to allow it. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And that's exactly what Stoicism teaches. Respond with firmness, not fury. Act with reason, not impulse. In this video, I'll show you how to transform other people's contempt into fuel for growth, and how to maintain inner peace even when the world tries to provoke you. So, if you've ever felt like someone is testing you, belittling you, or taking advantage of your calm, stay with me until the end, because what you'll hear here can completely change how you deal with disrespect. And before you continue, comment. How many times have you let something that hurt you slide just to avoid conflict? Write enough if you're ready to turn this page. Today, we'll understand how the Stoics reacted when insulted, humiliated, or provoked, and how this philosophy can teach you to set boundaries without having to raise your voice. Because respect, my friend, begins when you decide what you no longer accept. From here on, every word will help you build a mental posture that no one will be able to shake. So take a deep breath, adjust your posture, and prepare to delve into one of the greatest human powers, self-control. First way, silence is a response. Not every provocation deserves a response. Sometimes silence is the loudest cry of your strength. How many times have you been tempted to respond to someone just to prove you were right, just to show that you're not stupid, that you also know how to defend yourself? But here's a truth that few have the maturity to face. Reacting to everything is losing power. Every time you respond in the same frequency as someone trying to provoke you, you surrender control of your mind. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, they all understood that silence, when born of self-control, is not weakness, it is authority. Because the wise man doesn't need to justify himself to those who provoke him. He understands that the other person is only trying to throw him off balance because he lacks control over himself. And in that moment, when you choose not to react, you're not swallowing a frog. You're demonstrating a strength that few understand. So comment below. Write silence if you've already learned that not everything deserves your energy. When you respond to every provocation, what you're really saying is, I still depend on the other person's approval for peace. But a Stoic's tranquility is non-negotiable. They don't stoop to the level of offense because they know that whoever controls their emotions controls their inner world. And that's true power. Think about it. The other person yells because they want to see you off balance. They want you to lose control, to react impulsively. And when you don't play along, when you respond calmly or simply turn your back, you shatter the provocateur's expectations. You don't become weak, you become untouchable. That's why silence in many moments speaks louder than any response. It communicates something words can't. I am my own master. And that's where true strength lies, in mastering one's own reactions. Remember what Epictetus said, what angers you dominates you. So ask yourself, who has been dominating you lately? That sharp comment? That look of contempt? Or are you the one who holds command of your mind, steady as a rock in the midst of chaos? Silence is the shield of the wise. It doesn't fade, it preserves itself. It doesn't shy away from conflict. It chooses where it's worth fighting. And this is one of the greatest lessons of Stoicism. You don't need to defend yourself from everything, because truth doesn't need to be proven. It stands on its own. When you practice conscious silence, you begin to realize how much energy, time, and peace you save. You stop reacting on impulse and start acting with intention, and that completely changes the game. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember, you are not obligated to respond. Sometimes the greatest act of power is simply observing in silence and moving on. Write silence in the comments if you've already understood that self-control is a form of freedom. Because in the end, those who learn to remain silent, not out of fear, but out of wisdom, achieve a level of peace that no insult can steal. And that's exactly what the Stoics sought, a mind unshakable in the face of the world's noise. Second way, set internal boundaries. What others do is theirs. What you accept is yours. This is one of the most powerful phrases Stoicism teaches us, because it reveals a truth few have the courage to face. Respect begins with you. There's no point in demanding from others what you don't do to yourself. People don't treat you as you deserve, but as you. Allow, and when you don't set clear boundaries, the world feels free to invade your space, play with your energy, and test your patience. The Stoics knew that no one can hurt you without your mental consent. Epictetus said that it's not what happens that affects you, but how you interpret it. In other words, you give others emotional permission to shake you, and when you understand this, you begin to build an invisible wall, not one that isolates you from the world, but one that protects your peace. This wall is made of self-knowledge, clarity, and dignity. So comment limit if you understand that respecting yourself comes before being respected, because that is the basis of all Stoic strength. Setting internal boundaries means learning to say no without guilt. It's understanding that self-preservation isn't selfish. True balance doesn't come from trying to please everyone, but from knowing what you're willing to tolerate and what simply isn't part of your journey anymore. The Stoic knew that not controlling the world wasn't synonymous with submitting to it. On the contrary, it meant acting wisely in the face of what you can't change, and firmly in the face of what you can. When you respect yourself, people feel it. When you take a stand, the world adjusts. And it's not about being rude, it's about being clear. Because those who don't define their boundaries end up being defined by others. Have you noticed that the more you sacrifice yourself to maintain harmony, the more people feel comfortable overcoming what bothers you? This happens because purposeless silence is interpreted as permission. But boundaries, when born of self-control, are a demonstration of self-love. They say, I know who I am, and I know what I no longer accept. That's where respect begins, when you stop waiting for others to recognize your worth and start living accordingly. The Stoics didn't demand respect. They inspired it through their behavior. And this is one of the greatest lessons you can take into your life. The world treats you with the same standards you set internally. If you have clarity, purpose, and determination within you, the outside world naturally reorganizes itself to reflect that. But if you have doubt, fear, and a need for approval within, anyone will find a way to destabilize you. Setting internal boundaries is, therefore, an act of silent power. It's declaring to yourself what you will no longer allow, what doesn't represent you, and what doesn't nourish your peace. From there, everything changes. Relationships become more sincere, conversations become more relaxed, and respect becomes inevitable. So, say boundary if you understand that true respect starts from the inside out. Because when you learn to respect yourself, you no longer need to demand anything from anyone. Your presence already makes clear what you tolerate and what no longer has a place in your life. And it is precisely at this point that the Stoics became unshakable, not because the world was kind to them, but because they had learned to be firm with themselves. Third way, use Stoic indifference. An insult only hurts you if you give it importance. He who doesn't react confuses the offender. This is one of the Stoics' most powerful mental weapons, indifference. But be careful. Indifference isn't coldness, it's emotional intelligence. It's the ability to look at chaos and decide not to be dragged by it. It's keeping a firm mind, even when the world tries to provoke you. The Stoic knew he can't control what others say, but he can control how much it affects him. And this is the secret of true freedom, not depending on the respect of others to maintain your peace. When someone tries to attack you and you choose not to react, something curious happens. The provocateur loses power. He expected you to explode, justify yourself, get angry. But your silence, your calm, and your neutral gaze completely disarm him. It's the kind of strength that doesn't shout, but commands respect through serenity. Comment on indifference if you want to learn to not be shaken, because that is one of the deepest pillars of Stoicism. Stoic indifference is an art that separates the wise from the impulsive. While most people react to everything, a nasty comment, a criticism, a rejection, the Stoic observes, filters, and only reacts to what truly matters. He understands that if everything affects you, then anyone can control you, and those controlled by other people's emotions lose control over themselves. Being indifferent isn't about ceasing to feel. It's about choosing what deserves your energy. It's about looking at a provocation and thinking, will this matter in a week, in a month, in a year? If the answer is no, silence is the wisest response. It's the same principle Marcus Aurelius applied when he said, if something external afflicts you, the pain comes not from the thing itself, but from your interpretation of it. In other words, power lies not in what is done to you, but in what you do with what happens to you. And when you begin to understand this deeply, you realize that true control isn't reacting, it's choosing when, how, and whether it's worth reacting. But be careful. Being indifferent isn't the same as being cold or emotionally closed off. Coldness is the absence of feeling. Stoic indifference is the presence of awareness. It's being so centered that nothing can throw you off balance, neither praise nor insult, because both are tests of the ego. Those who are exalted by praise are slaves to approval. Those who are shaken by criticism are prisoners of other people's opinions. The Stoic seeks the middle ground, the balance that keeps them free. When you master this art, respect comes naturally, because people realize you're not manipulated by petty emotions. You become the kind of person who doesn't need to defend themselves because your posture speaks for itself. So say indifference if you want to learn to. Remain calm even when everything around you tries to throw you off balance. Remember, those who don't react confuse the offender. And this confusion is the beginning of your victory. Because when others lose control trying to hurt you and you remain serene, the world understands. No one can touch those who have learned to master themselves. Fourth way, observe, don't judge. Those who disrespect you reveal more about themselves than about you. Their reaction reveals their level of consciousness. This is one of the greatest keys to Stoic wisdom. Understanding that other people's behavior is a mirror of their minds, not yours. When someone disrespects you, lies to you, criticizes you, or tries to diminish you, they are revealing their inner state, not your worth. The Stoic understands this deeply. They observe, analyze, but don't judge, because they know that judging is wasting energy on what is beyond their control. The wise prefer to use disrespect as a training ground for self-mastery. Instead of reacting angrily, they ask themselves, what is this situation trying to teach me about myself? This shift in focus completely transforms the game, because the moment you stop reacting to others and start observing yourself, the power returns to your hands, and that's exactly what Stoicism teaches. not to let other people's behavior determine your inner state. Right awareness, if you've noticed that the other person talks more about themselves, because that's the first step to freeing your mind from the need to prove something to someone who doesn't understand your worth. When you observe without judgment, you grow. When you react, you shrink. This is the difference between the common mind and the Stoic mind. The common man interprets an insult as a personal affront, the Stoic as an opportunity for strengthening. He understands that every attack is, in fact, a test of conscience, a chance to practice patience, empathy, and emotional control. And make no mistake, this is not passivity, it is strength. It is the power to choose what will affect you and what will simply pass. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "When someone wrongs you, think, he acts this way because he believes it is right." And it is precisely this insight that transforms resentment into compassion and anger into wisdom. You are not ignoring the other's mistake. You are simply deciding not to carry its weight. You are letting each provocation serve as an exercise in a strong mind and a light heart. Because in the end, those who are easily angered become hostage to others, but those who observe with serenity master themselves, and that is true power. Transforming offense into self-mastery is what differentiates the reactive from the conscious. The reactive reacts to what they feel, the conscious responds to what they understand. This is how the Stoic lives. Instead of trying to change the world, they change how they see it. And when perception changes, everything around them loses its power to destabilize them. So, the next time someone offends you, try to do the opposite of instinct. Don't respond immediately, just observe. See how the emotion arises, notice what it awakens in you, and then decide if it's worth giving up your peace for something so small. This is the Stoic exercise in action, realizing that the other acts according to their own ignorance, while you choose to act according to your conscience. And it is this difference that elevates you to another level. So write conscience in the comments if you already understand that true respect arises from lucidity, not revenge. Because when you stop judging and start observing, the world ceases to be a threat and becomes a mirror of your own growth. And it is there, at that point of calm and clarity, that you finally discover what it means to be truly unshakable. Fifth way, withdraw with dignity. Withdraw in silence, not to prove anything, but because your peace is worth more. This is one of the hardest and most liberating lessons of Stoicism. Knowing when to leave is a virtue few master, because the ego always wants to have the last word, to prove itself right, to win the argument. But the wise understand that winning isn't always about speaking louder. It's about leaving whole. The Stoic learns to recognize when the environment, the relationship, or the conversation no longer has anything to offer. They realize that remaining in places where there is disrespect, manipulation, or a constant need to justify oneself is the same as negotiating one's own serenity. And serenity, my friend, is priceless. Withdrawing with dignity isn't about running away. It's about choosing your peace over the approval of others. It's about understanding that silence, when born of maturity, is the highest response there is. Comment peace if you'd rather lose an argument than lose your temper, because that's the kind of choice that separates the impulsive from the conscious, the reactive from the wise, the wounded from the healed. Stoic philosophy teaches that there is no honor in remaining in places that destroy your balance. Remaining where your presence is undervalued is not loyalty, it is self-neglect. Seneca said, "He who constantly lives with vice becomes contaminated by it." And this is an undeniable truth. The more time you spend surrounded by toxic energy, the more your mind becomes accustomed to disorder, and chaos begins to seem normal. Stoic doesn't allow this. He observes, understands, and, when necessary, withdraws. No drama, no speech, no need to explain, because peace requires no justification. When you walk away from something that hurts you, You are practicing one of the purest acts of self-love. It's a choice of emotional maturity where you set your ego aside to protect your mind, your time, and your energy. Detachment isn't about contempt. It's about respect. Respect for yourself, respect for your own silence, and respect for the life you want to build. And it is precisely this self-control that sets him apart. The Stoic knows that not every confrontation needs to be won. Some just need to be abandoned. He understands that there are people who don't want to understand. They want to win. And arguing with someone who doesn't seek clarity is like shouting at the wind. You only tire yourself out. So he chooses the harder but wiser path, that of leaving without carrying any grudges. And this gesture in itself is power. Because leaving with dignity means not allowing the other to transform you into someone you are not. It means saying goodbye calmly, even when provoked, because you've already understood that silence speaks louder than any explanation. When you withdraw for the sake of your peace, the world calls it coldness, but the wise call it conscience. So, comment peace if you understand that protecting your tranquility is the greatest act of strength anyone can perform. Because in the true Stoic doesn't seek to win arguments, they seek to conquer themselves. And whoever conquers themselves conquers any environment, any person, and any situation with dignity, serenity, and a calm that no one can steal. Sixth way, turn disrespect into fuel. Use the pain of disrespect as energy to evolve. The Stoic thanks even the enemy because it strengthens him. This is the difference between those who break and those who grow. Most people use disrespect as a reason to give up, to shut down, to harbor resentment. The Stoic does the opposite. He understands that every provocation is a training session, every humiliation is a chance to hone character, and every offense is an invitation to become more conscious. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, and when the wise choose to turn pain into fuel, they convert what was weakness into strength, what was anger into focus, what was resentment into clarity. They don't react by yelling, they react by growing. And that's why Stoics were never victims of circumstances. They were forged by them. So say go for it if you're going to use disrespect as training, not as a wound, because that's the attitude that separates those who just survive from those who evolve. The Stoic looks at the enemy and sees a teacher. He understands that obstacles are the soul's training ground. Marcus Aurelius said, "The obstacle to the path becomes the path." And this is one of the most powerful phrases in all of Stoic philosophy. What the world throws at you, the wise man uses as building material. While others complain about the weight, he lifts it and grows with it. This is how the Stoic becomes unshakable. He doesn't run from pain, he learns from it. And disrespect, however unfair, is one of the greatest opportunities for emotional strengthening. Because it's easy to remain calm when everything is going well. It's difficult to remain calm when the world provokes you. It's there, in the heat of disrespect, that self-control truly reveals itself. So the next time someone tries to belittle you, don't react with anger. Observe, smile internally, and say to yourself, "Thank you, you just gave me another reason to evolve." It is this mindset that transforms wounds into strength, insults into fuel, and wounded pride into wisdom. When you learn to be grateful, even for attacks, no one can hurt you anymore, because disrespect loses its power over those who transform it into learning. The Stoic doesn't want to prove anything to the world. He wants to prove himself worthy of his own peace. He understands that the best response to contempt is silent evolution, to keep growing while the other person keeps talking. And that's the kind of victory no one can take away. From the moment you choose to strengthen yourself instead of taking offense, you completely change the dynamics of your life. The world stops being a battlefield and becomes a mental gym. Every criticism becomes a training ground in patience. Every Offense becomes a test of focus, and every loss becomes a lesson in purpose. So comment strength if you've decided to use disrespect as fuel for growth, not as a wound to mourn. And if this video resonated with you, like it, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to continue this stoic journey with me. Because true power is not in being respected by everyone, but in becoming someone that not even disrespect can shake.